species like Cinnamomi appears to not care about sex. It's always the one mating type. That is one interesting thing. And also, when you look at the cases with Phytophthora infestans, it was only one mating type at the very beginning in Ireland, and then the other mating type. So one is male and the other one is female acting was introduced, and then you had this genetic crossings, and new offsprings became much more pathogenic compared to their parents. There was some incidences that genetic or sex was helpful for the pathogen's fitness, but there are cases in the Ramorum and Cinnamomi that sex doesn't play a role, it seems like. The species definitions, we follow the botanical naming nomenclature too, and there are certain rules that you define a species, and today, of course, with the molecular tools, when we describe a species, we have to check with all the available molecular tools looking at particular genes and regions of the DNA, and matching it with morphology and matching it with ecology. So then all those combinations, if it's unique enough, then you describe it as a new species. So we are pretty good in the standard what should be described as a new species in the people who work on Phytophthora particularly. And yeah, there seems to be a lot of species to be discovered, and this is particularly true for plants, for macromycetes, and for microscopic organisms in soil. You pick up a handful of soil and you find 100 different organisms. So it's so diverse. You look for endophytes on a leaf, you find 30 different species of endophytes. You have the epiphytes, you have the bacteria on it. So diversity is pretty high in microscopic level, but it still is so much to do. I mean, and the best prediction is if we go with this speed in 2100, we will be probably discovering about 35% of the biodiversity that we know.
The picture with the leaves at the top of the tree. Is it typical for this tree or this
yes, for this filter, yes, actually. It is one of the species that actually has airborne capability, and when there is enough rain and so on, it produces spores, and with circulating air or turbulences, it just jumps from one crown to the other one, or gets up to the crown or branches, and that's why you see from the top to the bottom. In tropical areas, in cacao, on you will see this airborne problem, and on citrus you will see sometimes on upper part too. And there are a number of other things like in tropical which I don't know too much about, but Phytophthora palmivora or tropicalis, all those seems to have this airborne capability, and all these pathogens that we identify as exotic, they like warm temperature. So then this is all like speculation unless we prove it certainly, but our idea is we will find so many other phytophthora that are today a problem here in agricultural ecosystems or in temperate forests. Some of them must have escaped from somewhere. So we don't know where, but that's what we are thinking, and those airborne capability probably refers also to this type of environment.
It doesn't need any vector?
No, it doesn't need any vector. The vector is air, rain, El Nino, that's it. And then, of course, if you move the soil from one area to the other one, you can be the vector. We haven't found that insects are vectors. Dead material, well, in foliage, if it's transmitted from one area to the other one, that can be another vector because they can sporulate on that foliage and eventually get to that area. But usually what we see is actually the climate.
I wanted to ask you, have you seen how frequent, or if it is frequent to have a co-infection? That, for example, if there is an infection of one bacteria, makes the tree much more sensible to the Phytophthora, or vice versa, Phytophthora could make it sensible to other allergens, not only fungi but also whatever?
Well, with Phytophthora, because it's so aggressive, once it gets to a plant, it seems like it kills it. It's pretty rare that a plant, if they get infected, it survives. And then whether really there is any connection with the other microflora, or I do not know, but one thing that is for sure is it stresses the tree. With the oak decline case, so Phytophthora is killing a certain amount of root. It stresses the tree, and if the energy balances are changing, because the tree will produce much more roots because your roots are killed. And then as if at the same time insect defoliates the tree, so you have to use the starch energy to produce more leaves. And then you have this drought, and at first year, next year the same thing happens again, and then you see the decline. And that's when people report in 1965 or so. And then you don't hear anything for 30 years. And then all of a sudden you have decline again. And he traced them back, all those links, and all this climate changes because of that. Very important. If there's this really dry period which stresses those trees, the energy balances are changed, and it is also good for the pathogen periods, better to kill much more roots because you have more drier summer and then lots of rain during the fall, which lots of spores will be produced, and for the pathogen to kill more roots. But there's no room for the plant to produce more roots. So it is kind of chain-like even, and this climate change has an influence in that respect too. Sometimes it has a good impact on the pathogen biology, but also stresses the tree, which eventually, if that happens again and again, then tree dies. So trees are pretty resistant, but all those changes in the environment can influence them. I think that is the best I give you in terms of how that can happen, but there is no data really whether it's bacteria or yeah. So it is probably one or the other making stress, and then plant is more vulnerable probably than the other, and opportunistic pathogen keeps see the damage.
¿Alguna pregunta extra? ¿Comentario? Sí.
Where's your sampling point, your sampling area here in Peru?
Where is it?
Yeah.
She can tell it. It's in Iquitos, Project Amazonas.
Yeah, we're visiting a biological station.
Hable en castellano, porque
En
todo.
español. Una estación biológica en Iquitos, cerca de Iquitos, es en la parte este, y es como 6 horas de la ciudad, y es una que se llama Madre Selva, que es parte del proyecto Amazonas. Tiene varias estaciones, hemos escogido Madre Selva, y yo nunca he ido a esa estación en particular, he estado en otras en el área, pero es nuevo para nosotros el lugar.
Otra pregunta, ¿por qué Iquitos?
¿Por qué? Porque yo ya muerto en Madre de Dios bastante, y yo después tengo un viaje a Tarapoto y me toca Iquitos, uno porque tiene varias estaciones biológicas, entonces es muy accesible la investigación, ¿no? Y segundo porque es otro, ¿cómo se dice?
Otra cuenca.
Otra cuenca, bueno, es la cuenca de la